Casting guru Nate Silver of 538. Nate, thanks for coming in. So you made your bones in 2008, 2012, nailed the election for Barack Obama. Like everyone else, you missed Donald Trump in the primary. So where does your forecast have the race right now?
So we show about a 3-point lead nationally for Clinton, and she's about a 2-to-1 favorite. The Electoral College math is actually less solid for Clinton than it was for Obama 4 years ago, where 4 years ago we had Obama ahead in states totaling 320-some electoral votes. Clinton has about 270, so she's one state away from potentially losing the Electoral College. You'd rather be in her shoes than Donald Trump's, but it's not a terribly safe position.
Yeah, you give her about a 65.7 chance to win. Now, this is the question I want to get to, though, because you say she has, according to your polling analysis, about a 3-point lead. That was about where President Obama was the Sunday before the election 4 years ago. Yet, and I want to put this up on the board right now, at that time you showed that he had an 85.1% chance of winning. So why the contrast right there?
So Clinton's a lot weaker in the Midwest, where 4 years ago President Obama was leading in Ohio by 4 points. Clinton's probably a couple of points behind there. Iowa, maybe the best poll in the country. The Des Moines Register poll showed her down 7 points in Iowa, a state she'll probably lose. So the demographics of Clinton don't actually work as well when you underperform among white non-college voters. That's a good
even though the national polling is about the same.
Even though, but it's contested in the Electoral College, and her Electoral College polling in the swing states is a little bit weaker than Obama's. So in some sense, it's a deceptively large or small lead for Clinton in some ways, whereas Obama actually had a bigger lead electorally than you'd think. The other thing, too, is that we see lots of polls that show numbers like Clinton 44%, Trump 40%. If you only have 44% of the vote, that means you're vulnerable if most of the undecideds break in a certain way, whereas 4 years ago it was like Obama 49, Romney 46. So in that sense, both candidates still need a good turnout on Election Day and still have their work cut out for them.
This year we've seen a very high early vote. About 41 million Americans have already voted. You don't really pay that much attention to the early vote.
Well, look, our model is designed to look at the public polling, and if you want to look at anything else that you want, the early vote, then that's fine, and I think there are definitely some decent signs for Democrats in Nevada, for example. But Democrats also in 2014 told themselves a lot of stories about how they'd be saved by the early vote and got wiped out across the board in the midterms. The polls actually overestimated how well Democrats would do, so I'd be a little bit careful. With the exception of Nevada, which is a hard state to poll, you know, that should be incorporated in theory in the polling numbers.
Another variability we've seen here right now, there have been a lot of other forecasts out there, Princeton Election Consortium, Huffington Post, several others, and New York Times. Yours is much more bullish for Donald Trump and more cautious on Hillary Clinton than theirs are. Why?
Because we think we have a good process, and look, you have some forecasts that show Clinton with a 98 or 99% chance of winning. That doesn't pass a common sense test, which is that we've seen lots of elections where there's about a 3-point polling error. In 2012, in fact, Obama beat his polls in many swing states by about 3 points. If Clinton were to beat her polls by 3 points, then you see something we might call a borderline landslide. But it goes the other way, and all of a sudden, Trump could very easily win the Electoral College. I mean, it's all based on history. People have different ways of interpreting history. But, you know, if you think a 3-point lead is going to be safe 98 or 99% of the time, then you probably didn't design the model in a good way.
48 hours before the final votes, I want to bring out Donald Rumsfeld. We can't know what an unknown unknown is.
Yeah.
But what about the known unknowns? What are you paying most attention to?
I mean, look, it is true that Democrats have a larger base, and so if Clinton gets her voters to turn out, and the weakest part of that might be African Americans who turned out in very big numbers for President Obama 4 years ago and 8 years ago, maybe millennial voters, if they turn out in big numbers, and there are better signs for Democrats in states like Florida and North Carolina recently, then she's in a pretty safe position. If they don't, though, and if there is a big white working class vote for Trump, if you see some suburban Republicans convert back to Trump at the last minute because he's been relatively quiet on the campaign trail, that's a case in which he could lose potentially. Even states like Colorado, that seems safe for Clinton, and she'll probably win, but you've seen tightening in many different states, and so there's a scenario too by which she winds up a little bit short of enough electoral votes.
Nate Silver.